stand on hallowed ground right here, and it has blossomed into this spontaneous outpouring of human freedom. Let's hear you say, do you love freedom?
And I know some of you out here, I don't know everybody out here, but I know a few of you out here. Many of you have always considered yourself soldiers of this war on drugs. I myself, I still say I'm a frontline soldier. I'm right there. I don't give a
Man, 420 is when all the people get together, no matter what color you is, you're gonna bleed green.
If you guys want to be somewhere on 420, this is what this is about, 420, okay? April 20th, the state capitol, on the steps.
I think you'd have to go back to the start. It's kind of interesting how many people that don't know the history about 420.
I want to say it's just a national time to smoke weed, man. I don't really know who invented it or who came up with it, but, you know, it's been like that. I'm going to be 32 years old, and ever since I can remember, I remember 420, you know, since a kid.
420 to me, man, it's everything, bro. It means more than Christmas to me as an adult.
It's definitely a holiday I love to celebrate.
I was more so fascinated by 420 because it really began where I grew up, in a little town called San Rafael, which is up in Marin County of Northern California. But there's a group of kids, and after school every day at 420, they would meet and they would try to search out into the foothills to find this supposed kind of lost marijuana farm that was out in the hills. They did this day in and day out and never found it, but it came to be that you would meet 420 to get the marijuana, to get the ganj. So the history is quite interesting, and it's just morphed into being the norm. I mean, just short of being an official federal holiday. I mean, maybe when the feds recognize it'll get there.
Here in Denver, it's a rally to bring awareness to the illegal weed and racial profiling, all of it.
I have understood for a long time that the policies of prohibition that the country has had for decades were total failures. We've seen that it essentially has been billions of dollars spent, millions of people incarcerated, and very little impact on actual health and safety outcomes.
In the cannabis industry, there's issues that need to be addressed. One of the big ones in Colorado right now is public consumption. We are seeing record number of tourists coming to Colorado. It's illegal to consume anywhere in public or in most hotel rooms. I mean, in the last apartment I was leasing, it was illegal for me to come home and smoke a joint. I could be evicted for consuming this perfectly legal product. And that's a real issue that the industry is facing right now and the legislators are facing.
I don't think it's a derogatory term. A lot of individuals call themselves, you know, I'm a stoner guy, I'm a stoner chick. Those are the kind of individuals that really embrace 420, that really, this is me, I'm proud of it, this is a lifestyle. It doesn't mean that I'm not as smart as anyone else or I'm not as motivated as anyone else.
And we just get together with everybody downtown, we're gonna smoke, peace, love, and peace of mind and relax. And 420 today, we're gonna celebrate like everybody's birthday today.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Cannabis is a website dedicated to the news and culture reporting around legal marijuana.
Everything you need in marijuana, news, views, reviews. I spend a lot of time thinking about pot.
We didn't know what it was going to look like, what it was going to feel like. We didn't know what legalization was going to look like, but that's the whole point behind the Cannabis. I started the website in November of 2013 after former Denver Post editor Greg Moore asked me to start a website about weed. At the Denver Post, we are the largest news gathering operation in Colorado.
It's somewhere where you can go and you can get a little bit of culture, but really what you're getting is you're getting the journalistic approach to this industry, which really doesn't exist. People think of pot and they think of Jamaican Flags and High Times Magazine and all these other very advocate-based journalism groups, and there's really no newspaper group. And that's how we approach it. We report on culture the same way we report on pesticides.
The people who are anti-legalization have very valid concerns, fearing that this is going to find its way into children's hands more prevalently now. John Hickenlooper, who's our governor, our former mayor, our current mayor of Denver, Michael Hancock, neither of these individuals were pro-marijuana, were pro-recreational, pro-legalization. They did not want this, but the people did. And so Hancock and Hickenlooper both took it upon themselves to implement the will of the people, and that's what we've seen. But if I had children, I wouldn't want them smoking weed or using marijuana until their brain was fully developed. They always think, oh, you're the weed editor. It's the coolest job. And well, it is the coolest job, and we want to be the authority on cannabis journalism. We've been covering weed for a very long time, going back to medical legalization in 2000 and recreational legalization in 2012, and then kind of in between when they finally regulated the medical system in 2009, which was when the dispensary boom happened and when we suddenly found ourselves with more medical marijuana shops than Starbucks.
Every journalist has an opinion on anything that they're going into and anything that they're reporting on. And while we're journalists, we're not advocacy journalists. You're dealing with prejudices on both sides, and you have to find that true, honest center. Like, this isn't a bad industry, but it's not always a great industry either, and you just have to always check yourself and just remember, you're not friends, you're the watchdog.
When is the brain fully developed? Is it 18? Is it 21? Some even say 25, but it's a part of the conversation that absolutely needs to be heard. And when you look at the regulation that's happened in this space, statewide and in local municipalities as well, I mean, all of the stakeholders have had a very big part in that conversation. I can honestly say that's been a success of this Colorado model, is realizing that what you're putting out there the first time in history that any government has ever tried to regulate and tax these kinds of sales, it's going to be imperfect. It's going to need input from the community and from stakeholders, and hopefully your own regulation and approach can become better through those tweaks.
The scene in Colorado is really trying to find itself right now. We're moving past the stoner stereotypes. Stoner jokes are old hat. Nobody really wants to hear them anymore. When Colorado sets its mind to something, it's gonna happen, and it happens quickly. It's very cool to watch.
If it came down to one thing that I've learned in the last 2.5 years, it's probably we've been lied to so much on this subject, and so it feels great to be a part of, you know, this movement. It's not a pro-legalization movement, it's a pro-truth movement, pro-journalism, and that's what we're doing here at the Post. This is a phenomenally historic time to be witnessing.
We carry alternatives to our firearm. The last thing we want to do is deadly force, but it's very important for us to have one. I'd rather have it, not need it, than need it, not have it.
Blue Line Protection Group is a compliance risk mitigation company. One of our focus areas is security for the legal cannabis industry here in Colorado and other states. In our business, we provide transportation for the cannabis product as well as cash.
to one of our clients where they've collected revenue from their dispensaries and they're preparing it for deposit into the banks. We're going to head up there, we're going to pick up their money, we're going to track it, secure it, and then bring it on to the truck, and then we're going to do the transport to the bank where they will receive it and deposit it accordingly.
We've had very good success thus far in the previous 2.5 years with hiring military folks and or law enforcement. It may seem a little strange, but they're looking at it as, well, it's a legitimate business now.
I did 18 years of law enforcement as a cop. I did 2 years in Kosovo, overseas in Iraq. I did that for about 9 years.
I am a former law enforcement officer. I had some very much ethical issues coming into it because I formerly worked in the narcotics field and actually made arrests for folks using illegal drugs, including marijuana. Ended up having a friend and we kind of discussed it. Said, well, Rick, you know, at one point you took an oath to protect the laws and the Constitution of the United States. That was ingrained in me for 30 years, but now it is legal. So do those folks not deserve the same amount of security and or protection that every other citizen or legitimate business would? Our business has grown to the point where we had to have a new building. Across here, as you can see, still in the construction phases, is a very large bank-grade vault. Now, you have to remember there's a lot of cash involved in this industry. There's the potential of millions of dollars.
It should be somewhere, I'm assuming, if everything goes right, it's probably close to somewhere near maybe 100,000 to 70,000.
It's really cool to kind of be one of the pioneers of the security for this industry.
Let's run good, legitimate businesses because the industry is producing a great deal of tax revenue. It's important that we do it right from the very beginning and we maintain that focus throughout as the industry grows.
I'm the driver. While Raph gets out, I stay in the vehicle, watch over, make sure no one tries to come to the vehicle. Because if something happens, it's going to happen fast and you really don't have time for communication. You know, obviously our life comes first, so we're gonna take care of ourselves. You know, we obviously want to protect the client's assets, but when it comes down to it, if he's got to drop a bag and go, you know, that's a liability we can take. I'd rather lose the money than lose his life. So.
Okay, we have arrived at the client's location to collect their revenue. I'm going to bag it, tag it, and track it, and then proceed back to the vehicle. Then we're going to head to the next venue, which will be the bank for deposit.
Good.
Okay, I'm out. Oh man, I always smell like dope when I go home.
Where will the ugly side or the cartel side or the dark side of the drug industry, will it raise its head and say, well, we're losing a lot of money? I think that's the part that I can't predict.
It's amazing, man. I feel happy every time I come to work. It's one of the greatest feelings in the world knowing that this is finally happening. Older generation never thought it would, man. My grandma's saying, still to this day, I can't believe you're farming marijuana.
So this industry is exactly like anything else. And when you come into my facility, your eyes will open and you'll say, this is an industry. This is not a subculture. So when people come into our facility, I think they expect to see a whole bunch of stoners around smoking and just kind of watching plants grow, and that's not the case. I got into this with my brother Pete. We co-founded Medicine Man in 2009. I went to him and said, hey, let's go big with this. And he said, okay. And so then the hard part started. We had to write a business plan that we could then take to my mother, and we first had to break the news to her that Pete actually smoked pot, and he was growing it in his basement, and he had been for years. And then we had to ask for money, and somehow she said yes to that. We harvest product on a daily basis, so it's a real machine. And the process goes from genetics, so making sure you have the right plants that you need in order to satisfy demand on multiple different fronts. And then you have cloning, so you take clones of those plants, just like anything else. You take a little shoot and you grow a root ball and you replant it. And then it goes into the vegetative state where it gets big enough, and then we move it into the flowering state where it ends up growing the buds that we sell.
And then they're packaged into a interim bag that we can then ship to infused products company or down to our own dispensary or whatever. So that's what he's doing, is he's getting all of these batches grouped together into manageable pouches, and we usually pack by the pound.
So in the cannabis industry, we're highly regulated, and one of those things that are regulated are the plants. We have to inform the state every time we take a cutting from a mother or every time we pop a plant from a seed.
So these tags, if it's blue, it means it's recreational. If it's yellow, like the one over there, it means it's medical. And this is the state tracking. There's an RFID circuit in there, hard to show while it's on the plant, and then there's a barcode. So if they bring in a hand scanner, they can hit a button and all the plants will give their inventory information to their scanner, or we use this to take inventory internally just so we have a record of the plant being here. It's currently drying, and as you see, that tag from below follows the plant wherever it goes, from seed to sale.
So at our current cultivation facility, we're growing just over 2 metric tons of cannabis a year. We're looking at about $14 or $15 million a year in revenue.
The U.S. is sort of unique in that we have a set of laws at the federal level, but we also have states that are able to make a lot of independent decisions about their policies. Drug policy is one that is particularly complicated in that respect, and especially now with marijuana policy, you've got a lot of states that are making the decision to move forward with a smarter approach that involves legalizing, taxing, and regulating marijuana. The federal government has lagged behind on this, and marijuana is still considered completely illegal at the federal level.
The federal laws regarding cannabis has prevented the banking industry from servicing us, quite honestly. Like my brother had an account with them for 20 years. They canceled not only all of the principal's accounts, but all of our children's accounts too. I'd go to work every day and I'd kind of peek around the corner when I got close to see if there's a whole bunch of black SUVs out front of our shop ready to take me to prison. And that's not a joke, that was true. I used to have dreams of not seeing my family because I was in prison. It was a recurring nightmare. Is there still a black market? Yes. There's still people that are pushing drugs to kids, and there's still people who are going to get it illegally. Maybe they're a professional and they don't want their name written down anywhere or whatever it might be. There is certainly still a black market, but it's far, far smaller than it used to be. Colorado is absolutely booming because of the cannabis industry. This market is growing and growing and growing. In a couple of years, or next year, it looks like 6.8 billion is what people are predicting, and that seems very reasonable to me. And in a $45 billion market, it's going to be bigger than beer.
I am a registered medical marijuana patient here in the state of Colorado, which means I have a license to be able to cultivate cannabis at home for medicinal use. I'm not stoned. I'm not. I'm not stoned. I mean, because I don't want to be. And I'm medicated. I know. So I make a lot of my own edibles. So this is actually canna butter that I've made myself. And then I keep them, these are about 2 tablespoon chunks, and I keep them in the freezer. And then I just thaw out what I need, and I can make cookies or muffins. use cannabis medicinally to treat the variety of symptoms that I experience from fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia is a chronic condition. Most people think of it as being chronic pain, but there's also chronic fatigue, insomnia, anxiety, digestive issues, mental clarity and focus.
Because of the way marijuana is classified at the federal level, it is considered to have, by the federal government, no medical value. And in fact, that makes it almost impossible to get federal funds to research any medical value. We have gone for so long with indications that cannabis can have such dramatic benefits on some of our most difficult conditions and illnesses, and we haven't followed up on those.
It's definitely saved the quality of my life, probably saved my marriage, you know, saved my relationship with my grandchildren and my children, because I can be more active with them. I can participate now. Pain at that level is completely overwhelming. I did use pharmaceuticals. I think, you know, after 28 years, part of the reason why I was so excited with cannabis too is it was something that I felt like I could live with for the rest of my life.
You can consume an enormous amount and it will be a terrible time, but it doesn't actually shut your brain down. You can certainly overconsume and then make bad decisions that could lead to your death. Sometimes people go a little overboard in saying, no one has ever died because of marijuana, and it's technically true, but you want to be understanding that there are risks involved.
I consume in probably every way you possibly can with cannabis. I rely primarily on edibles. I like the long-acting effect that I get. I augment that with smoking or vaporizing, sublingual tinctures. We also have patches and creams.
So right now what you see over here is everything that we grow down here for our medical patients. They make it in so many different forms. You got the lotions, so if you have arthritis, you got, you know, types of little pains like that, you can use it as a topical rather than smoking. You know, just like the edibles, people who don't want to smoke, they can induce it that way. Another great one is tinctures, you know, the hemp tinctures or the CBD tinctures. This is what the children are moving all across the world for around here. You know, is this stuff right here. This is what the people want, you know, this is what they're giving their kids that's not getting them high and that's stopping them from doing 100 seizures to 3 seizures a day.
The kids that are using cannabis for epilepsy, a lot of them are using the high CBD form. That's cannabidiol, that's what you're hearing about with Charlotte's Web or Haley's Hope.
There are people whose lives have been completely changed by access to medical marijuana. Are there some people who are maybe exaggerating their claims in order to get access to marijuana? Sure. But at this point, the stories are just too overwhelming to deny.
If this was your child, wouldn't you do anything, you know, to save their lives? And I am just really grateful that Colorado has been able to play this role, to be this beacon of hope and healing for so many people.
I moved out here because I didn't care for the lifestyle and the pace of life from the East Coast. I moved from New York City. I have always consumed, you know, in my life. I never expected to be in the cannabis industry.
I'm Jeremy Bamford. I'm the CEO and founder of potguide.com. We were created as a resource for consumers for marijuana tourism in Colorado. We're an ancillary business, meaning we don't touch the plant. We don't grow it. We don't sell it. We're strictly informational. Our website is comprised of business directory showing people where to buy, where to stay, and what to do. And so essentially, you know, we don't provide any of our services ourselves other than promoting these businesses.
We are hoping to change the way that people view the cannabis industry. Some people still think that we just come to work and get high, or
Right,
we're just going to events, and there's often this different light that is shed upon the industry that really should not be there anymore.
Really challenging part of the cannabis industry is raising money. A lot of these investment firms are very cautious about investing in this industry. I mean, they understand the growth rate. Cannabis was the fastest growing industry in the US in 2014 and 2015. I know there's expected to be over 12,000 dispensaries open in the United States by 2020. And so this is a huge industry.
The stigma that the cannabis industry carries is very interesting, and one that we continue to fight every day.
It took us months and months to find a banking solution, and the banks are very concerned about accepting our deposits because they know a lot of our revenue is generated directly from promoting dispensaries, and obviously we're accepting money from them. So we're kind of one off the chain from the drug money, I guess you could say. Most of the companies are receiving funding not from venture capitalist firms, but from angel investors. To invest in our companies, they have to be what's called an accredited investor. And to be accredited in regards to the eyes of the IRS, you have to have over $1 million of net worth, excluding your primary residence, and/or earn a salary of $250,000 per year.
We're seeing these larger companies come around and recognize the value that cannabis can bring to their business. And so some of those larger names, ones that we are working with in the very near future, are more accepting and realize the potential and obviously the money that could be made there.
One of the biggest issues here is consumption, and where do people consume at, and especially from a tourism perspective. Colorado does not allow social lounges for marijuana consumption. There are some gray area businesses operating, but there hasn't been a lot of clarity. So you're seeing a lot of tourists come out here and they have nowhere where they can actually combust, like smoke a joint.
When it comes down to it, people are asking, well, once we buy weed, where do we go? What do we do? We hope to be able to overcome that and be able to provide our users with an answer to that. Right now, Denver and Colorado, we're forcing people to break the law. That is something that, as a legitimate cannabis business, we do not want to support. That leads into this huge issue about driving under the influence. We don't have that test yet to accurately determine from a legal standpoint whether or not a person is high. That is definitely a huge topic, especially in the state of Colorado. It's interesting to think about, when you're on the road, who is high? And you worry about that with drinking, but all of a sudden now you have another substance which, we believe should obviously be respected, but where is that line? I saw what the investors and what other people are seeing in terms of the potential of the industry, the green rush as they're calling it, this community that we've become a part of in Denver. We're leading the way. People are looking towards us to establish the start of this revolution.